Hi, everyone. I'm Steven Sigman.
And I'm Mike Massinio.
This is the Weekly Movie Throwdown, a discussion show where each week we dig into a film that fits into our overall monthly theme. This week, we wrap up Stories of Summer Month with a really good one from 1994. It's Crooklyn, written and directed by Spike Lee and his sister Joie and his brother Cinqué. Before we do, let's talk about a little movie news.
So just a couple quick things. We always talk about the never-ending IP graveyard that they're constantly digging up. I just saw something that apparently Jamie Lee Curtis is involved in a movie version of Murder, She Wrote, where she will play Jessica Fletcher. And I have to admit, my blood turned cold when I saw that.
Oh, boy.
I just feel like there are certain things you cannot touch. And like that is probably one of them. The only thing that gave me a glimmer of, I guess, hope may not be the right word, but it's the guys who made the Lego movie and are involved in writing the script, which makes me think maybe they're going to take a very irreverent tone.
This Lord and Miller?
Yeah, and not necessarily follow the the exact format of what the show was, but do something that kind of inverts it. And maybe I feel like that's the only way to do it, because there's just no way you can make this story straight and have anybody really want to see it. I mean, it's like the original is so iconic. I just think it would be a huge minefield. So maybe that's the way they're going to handle it, which is the only way I would even remotely consider watching it.
Yeah. It feels like, I mean, she was in Knives Out. It almost feels like she's in the role that Daniel Craig played in this movie. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely that's definitely a fraught one. I gotta say, I was a little concerned.
Yeah,
We'll have to
leave
see.
it alone. Don't. Yeah. Well, we'll see.
The only other thing I guess I want to mention is I'll be the Grim Reaper this week and mention two deaths that mattered to me, I guess, as a child of the 80s. But I mean, obviously Hulk Hogan dying is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And Malcolm Jamal Warner also passing away suddenly and pretty tragically in a drowning incident. It made me think two things. It was sad to me to see both of them pass, but it also made me think about how many of the things that I loved as a child have become problematic now.
Yeah.
And hard to parse. I mean, because Hogan and like the Cosby Show were such seminal parts of my childhood, both of which are very hard to think about in certain ways anymore.
Right.
Especially Hogan. It's there's that great line in The Dark Knight where it's like you live long enough to become the villain, and I feel like that's exactly what happened to Hogan, in wrestling and then in real life. It's hard for someone who loved him as the iconic version of himself in the 80s to kind of square that with what all the stuff that came out about how he ran his career and everything that went on with that. So it's all just messy, which I guess kind of everything from the 80s becomes. It all just feels really messy. But
yeah.
But yes, I mean, I actually remember distinctly owning the Hulkamania workout set, which was basically like a Hulkamania headband, 2 5-pound weights, and a cassette tape in which Hulk gave you his workout, like a motivational workout tape. And it was amazing. It was completely amazing.
Now, how many inches were your pythons after you did that for a week? Were they 24?
I want to say they maybe grew a couple of inches, but they never got to 24.
I've never heard of that, but that sounds insane.
It was one of my prized possessions as a kid.
He was, maybe I'm wrong, but just in thinking about it quickly, he was really one of the first wrestlers that kind of have like a big marketing thing with products, wasn't he?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That I mean, Hogan is probably the singular most important figure in making wrestling, a national, if not international, thing. And the marketing. I mean, it's really the brainchild of Vince McMahon and him, but it was Vince's ideas, but you had to have a star that was marketable enough to do it. And Hogan was that person. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. I mean, he was such a symbolic, such a symbolic kind of iconic figure that transcended wrestling and really changed what it could be. I mean, there's no Rock without Hogan coming first.
Right.
So you have to take all that stuff into account while also keeping in mind like all the problems that Hogan being Hogan.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've seen a lot of mixed reactions to his passing online. So
yeah, it's just hard not to have mixed feelings about it. I mean, because the kid in you that grew up watching him, that will never go away. But as you get older and find out all the behind the scenes stuff and how many people he screwed along the way and just the way he conducted his business, and then of course there's all the Gawker stuff and everything else that went after that, which is not great either. But yeah. So as anything, it's all jumbled up and problematic and confusing. But I will choose to remember WrestleMania 3, and that'll be that.
I remember going to WrestleMania 1 with my dad, and it was like closed circuit. It was the first time I'd ever seen closed circuit television, and we went
That's
to
another huge innovation that wrestling kind of brought forward, using that closed circuit thing. Yeah.
It was basically like a movie theater, right? But it was like a high school auditorium or something. And they just had them everywhere. And even as a young kid, I remember thinking like, this is huge. This is really amazing.
Well, I read a book on Vince McMahon fairly recently, and they talk about that and what a big deal that actually was. That like WWF at the moment was kind of hanging on a knife's edge, and if WrestleMania, if that whole project had failed, it very well could have gone under.
Right.
I mean, it was kind of the moment where it either was going to launch or it was going to fall. And because they had this giant grand plan of the closed circuit stuff and kind of really making it events, and if it failed, it probably would have crumbled. The whole company would have crumbled underneath it. So it was a huge gamble and an undertaking.
It's very interesting to look back on that whole trajectory of wrestling from the 80s and the media aspect of it. And it almost makes me think of like Marvel a little bit and how it's grown into all these different places and all these narratives. And it seems to be a little more long lasting than maybe Marvel is going to be, but
yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, it is similar in some ways to comic books. I think that's partially why I liked it as a comic kid. I mean, it's a similar thing where you follow these storylines and you follow these characters. They become good and bad and everything else. It's I could go on about the whole history of wrestling for quite a while. It's a whole separate pod, but we won't really get into it. But without Hogan, I don't think any of it really happens. You needed that person to carry it on their back.
Right.
And he was the guy.
Rocky 3 would have been a very different movie without Hulk Hogan.
Well, I mean, Rocky 3 is the kind of the reason. And again, going back to Stallone, it's like him putting Hogan in Rocky 3 is part of the reason that Vince McMahon Sr. fired Hogan from wrestling at the time because they didn't want you to think that wrestling wasn't real. So that kind of broke the kayfabe thing. And so they fired him. But Vince Jr. realized that was what he needed, like a true star and someone that could cross over, and he saw it, and when he took over the company he brought him back.
Right.
And that is really the difference between the old way of thinking and the new way of thinking, that Vince Jr. understood what Hogan could bring after seeing him in Rocky 3, and that kind of changed everything.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But nonetheless, Hulk Hogan and Malcolm Jamal Warner passed this week. I think tangentially, it's worth mentioning Ozzy Osbourne also passed. I mean, not a storied film career or anything, but he did play himself in a handful of films. He was in Little Nicky. Sure. He was in Austin Powers Goldmember. So, he had a presence on the big screen for better or worse. And so, if you're mentioning those two passings, you might as well mention him as well, because that's the trifecta for the week, right? They always say it's threes.
Yeah.
And,
Ozzy larger than life, really. But it's one of those things where you see him pass and you're kind of like, I think it's amazing he lasted as long as he did. And now it's kind of just Keith Richards, where you're like, I guess Keith Richards is going to live forever. But those two guys were kind of like the barometers of how much abuse you could do to yourself and survive. Ozzy got 76 years, which is quite a lot considering what he looked like in his 30s. So,
Yeah. And you mentioned last week the what's the documentary? Decline of Western Civilization Part 2. Yeah. And he's in that when he's like off of drugs, and he looks worse than he's ever looked before. So he was quite a character, and
He was, but also by all accounts a good guy. And let's not forget about that. I mean, there's the character, just like, I mean, tied in with wrestling, there's the character that you play, and there's the person that you are,
Right.
and it's like, anyone that really knew Ozzy or met him or even interviewed him said he was such a nice guy, like a really sweet guy to talk to, and I think that's part of why he was so beloved. I mean, besides inventing heavy metal, I mean, obviously there's that, but even within the community, everyone loved him. I mean, he was just a good guy, and people really liked him.
Had a bit of a love-hate relationship with animals, because there's the bat, and like you see that he snorted ants, but he was very very outspoken about animal rights later in life, I think because of his family's influence, so certainly appreciate that.
We can evolve. Don't forget the dove. He also bit the head off the dove, but that was an accident. But anyway.
Jesus Christ.
Like I said, I can't believe he made it to 76.
Yeah. What an accident that was. It's crazy. So I forgot what I was going to talk about this week in news, but you mentioning IP reminded me of it. And a story broke this week that the queen of IP now, Margot Robbie, is taking her Lucky Chap production studio coming off of Barbie, and she's teaming up with Tim Burton to remake The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. And I'm quite intrigued by this because I think that's a movie that Tim Burton could really lend his sensibilities to and make it interesting. I mean, I think about Ed Wood or like Mars Attacks and all these other things that he did. Like, it really feels like it could fit his style in a good way. And I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But her playing a 50-foot woman would be pretty interesting, I think.
I think it's also a good sign that Tim Burton is kind of getting back to being Tim Burton, which also seems like a good thing.
Yeah.
See, I don't remember The Attack of the 50-Foot Woman that well. What I remember watching obsessively was The Incredible Shrinking Woman with Lily Tomlin back in like the early 80s.
I love that movie.
That was a big movie for me, I guess, because it was on HBO a lot. Like, I watched that movie a lot.
I always remember thinking, like, this kind of maybe like put my brain into thinking about production and filmmaking, because I always thought about what the set must have looked like for her to be sitting in a giant chair, or like, all of the numerous other things where she was little on top of something big. So yeah, gosh, I'm glad you brought that up, because I really love that movie too. For the same reason, always on HBO, and I always saw it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. All right. Well, something that I think was probably also on HBO a lot was this film we're going to talk about this week. So let's move on from news and talk about Crooklyn.
Yeah. So right out of the gate, I'm going to apologize to you, because I had actually never seen Crooklyn before either.
What?
Nah, I know. You thought I had. I never saw that before.
That explains.
Yes, it does. That's why I have to apologize.
Okay.
Like, I knew about it. I've seen almost every Spike Lee movie, and for some reason, I'd never seen Crooklyn. And we were doing Summer Month, and I thought, I know Crooklyn takes place during the summer. I'm like, we should add this one. This is cool. This kind of fits a lot of checks a lot of boxes. The reason for me to watch it. I had no idea we would end the month on such a dark note. I was not prepared. I was not prepared for that.
That's interesting, because I thought what you were going to say is that even though it's set at home, a big part of Troy's journey is going somewhere else and spending time. So.
Even that, there's a lot of things in it. I thought it was going to be all about summer in Brooklyn, but no, obviously she goes down south. So there's a lot of things in this that I have to apologize for, but mainly, Jesus, I didn't know it was going to bring the mood down so hard.
Well, that's really fascinating, because my take on it is very different. I found it to be incredibly beautiful and moving. And I know there's, like, to jump ahead, there's a death at the end, but I felt like it was just so heartwarming to watch this family like live in this time and be together during this summer. And like, it felt so real to me. Maybe that's why it didn't feel like gloomy or anything, despite someone dying.
I felt exactly the same way till the end. Yeah. But yeah, I think I really am glad we picked this, because in a lot of ways it's a really fascinating movie to look at in terms of where it fits in this period of time in the 90s, but also in Spike Lee's overall filmography. And also what I think it ends up influencing down the road. I think that to me, I see, going back and watching it now, I see mirrors of this in a lot of other things that came after it.
I'm so glad you brought this up because as much as you see influences before it, and like some of the things that jump out are like Stand By Me, for example, with the music and the time and the setting, maybe not the setting, but like the music in particular, setting the scene for you and giving you a sense of when it is. There's another film called Pachote from Brazil that by Hector Babanco that this takes a lot from, and it shows like Spike Lee's love of world cinema, and you see it all the time. I mean, he's remaking a Kurosawa movie that comes out in a few weeks, and I went to an exhibit at the Academy Museum in Los Angeles that was just Spike Lee's movie paraphernalia or memorabilia. And he just had all of these posters from films that he loved, and he worked to get all of them signed by directors. Like there was a Cool Hand Luke poster and just like dozens and dozens of posters that just really give you an idea of what like a world cinema fanatic this guy is. It was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I always really think of Spike Lee and Martin Scorsese together for some reason. And the more that I've watched their films and seen them speak, the more I see that. And I love watching them speak to each other.
Right.
Because they are both, true New York people that make a lot of New York movies, especially when they started out. I mean, very New York centric filmmakers, but with a love of film going way beyond where they started, where they grew up. And they bring all those influences into what they do. But at their heart, they're both New York guys and both grew up in very similar circumstances and reflect that in their films, especially their early films.
Right.
And, I guess maybe as someone who is also a New Yorker, I just love watching that reflected in their work, but being able to transcend it by bringing in, they both love world cinema and they love old cinema, and all of those things just kind of meld together in these, and they're both, great filmmakers, but also messy, strange, weird filmmakers as well. And Crooklyn's a really good example of that with Spike Lee as well. With this movie, you get everything. Spike Lee is divisive. He is messy. And that's what I love about him as a filmmaker, that you very rarely get like a linear Spike Lee movie. I mean, Inside Man kind of being the one thing that jumps out where he finally was like, fine, I'll make a movie for you. Right. And you saw that when he wants to do it, he can easily make a fantastically compelling straight movie. But that's not what he wants to do. He wants to make messy, strange, confusing movies that jump around and that are sometimes hard to follow. And that's what he's going to give you. And he is quintessentially himself no matter what. And that's what I've always liked about him.
I love that you brought up Scorsese because, I mean, there are just so many parallels with the music in particular, but, the New York setting, like you said, the camera work is very Scorsese-esque to me in this. Right. And this is kind of a departure for Spike in that it's like a more personal film than a lot of the other ones. And it's much less political than the things that came before it.
That's the other part that I wanted to talk about. When this movie was made. So this is coming right off the heels of Malcolm X, which of course was obviously his most political film. And, for people that weren't around during that time, I mean, it was culturally huge. I mean, Malcolm X hats were selling everywhere. I mean, it was a big deal. I mean, it was kind of a bit of a cultural phenomenon, especially in the Black community, but, kind of everywhere it touched it, a lot of aspects of the culture in the moment. And it was controversial and it was big and loud and it was, it was kind of everywhere. And I think it's just, I want to say it was kind of his grand statement in that moment, the movie he'd been building towards making. And after he makes it, it's like, well, what's Spike Lee going to do next? And taking this kind of a right turn into a much, much smaller film, but also a much more personal film. And again, not a rated R movie either, more of a family movie, a PG-13 movie. it again just shows you that he was constantly going to keep you guessing in terms of what he was going to do.
Well, what's interesting is, so this was co-written by Spike with his sister, Joie. Is that how we say it? Joie?
I saw it as Joie, but
Joie.
maybe I am incorrect.
Joie and Cinqué.
Yeah.
His sister and brother. She originated the story and took it to Cinqué, and the two of them kind of developed it together. It was originally pitched to Nickelodeon as a series and didn't test very well. So then they took it to Spike, and he was able to put a little bit more of his touch on it and get it produced as a film. I can maybe see a little bit of how it would end up on Nickelodeon, but really, I don't know if there would be an audience for it.
That's probably why they didn't make it.
Yeah.
I think that they thought the story was, you know what it was, because it took place in the 70s. That's why it didn't test well. That it was hard to get an audience to kind of want to see something that took place in the past. So I heard that was what was problematic about it.
Yeah,
because it very much is a movie of the 70s. I mean,
right. I mean, it's also the story of a black family with a little girl at the center of it, which
that doesn't help either.
Yeah,
but I will say, as I was watching this, and I'm glad you brought that up because I really did think about that. That when Spike Lee did some interviews in this, he specifically talked about wanting to make a family movie, but also about a movie about a black family to show the universality that everybody kind of thinks that everyone lives these separate lives, and in a lot of ways, what Crooklyn is at its heart is it's not necessary. Yes, it's of a specific time and a specific place and with a specific family, but I found it to be really universal. If you grew up at any point, if you grew up from the mid 60s to the mid 80s, that is what this movie is a touchstone for. Like, I feel like if no matter what town or city you grew up in, if you grew up in this period of time, that this movie speaks to you. And that is what it kind of showed to me, that this stuff was universal, the fact of growing up in this period of time. And the opening sequence, which I love so much, that he shows all the games the kids are playing. And as people like us who grew up in that period of time, I mean, those are things that we know and that we remember and have kind of gone away. I don't know what it would be like for my children to see this movie now and have no reference to a lot of these things. But for us, I mean, that was how we grew up too. I mean, I grew up playing stickball, and that Caps game with the they were playing with the coins. I used to play that game with bottle caps, and you would fill them with crayon. Because you could fill it with your own color, so it could be whichever color you wanted to.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that game, but those are the things I distinctly remember. So I think it was very universal for people of our age. I think
not universal for the children who acted in this movie, because Spike had to teach them how to play all of the games.
Right, and that was 94, right? So only imagine what it would be like now. I mean, this seems like it's from another planet.
Right. He did say that he made this specifically to sort of bust out stereotypes about black families with, not both parents being there, pregnant daughters, thug sons. And I think by breaking that stereotype, you do show that universality you're talking about. And it to me, like, of all the things we've done this month, I guess it's crazy to compare Crooklyn to summer school, but I can see a little bit in those characters, of kind of like coming of age a little bit, way more so in the way back. Like Duncan in particular feels in some ways similar to Troy in this film. Just like sort of the almost like an island in a way. I mean, she's a girl in a family of men and boys outside of her mother, but she's kind of the one who's like at the center of the story, and it really feels sort of alienated to me. She's sent away and finds almost like a bit of a kindred spirit in her cousin Viola, which is something that she'd been lacking because she's just around men all the time. And that's very interesting.
I like that. You talked before about that it was written by his sister and that he ends up taking the movie on. I am fascinated about the behind the scenes stuff regarding this movie because, families are messy to begin with. And she has talked about how initially she kind of regretted giving the movie to Spike to make. And I can understand that. And supposedly it wasn't the easiest shoot, and there were tensions on the set because this is basically her story.
Right.
And she wrote it. But now you have your brother who was in your story telling it. And I'm sure there are things that he changed or shaded, or because he's a filmmaker, he's going to do what he wants to do. But she had a vision of what she wanted it to be.
Right.
And they were butting heads. And Cinqué is kind of in the middle trying to mediate this because it's also his story. And I just I'm obsessed with the idea of just how messy that must have been. I think the rule of thumb is if you're going to make a movie about your family, you should probably do it alone. I don't think you should bring your family into making a movie about your family, because you're going to have conflicting feelings about incidents and how they went down. But of course, him being the director, he gets the final say. And she talked about a few instances where she had wanted something done differently, and he just said no because he's the boss.
Right.
And he's the older brother, and he's the successful director, and he can do whatever he wants to do. And so the tension there must have been really difficult on set, I think. And the fact that she's acting in the movie as well, and was the person who was working with the kids. And so I feel like I would have loved to have seen a behind the scenes documentary of making this movie, because it must have been amazing.
I agree. I would love to see that as well. I think that's probably something that happens a lot when families work together on telling a story.
Absolutely. And telling your own story. Yeah. Again, it's like it's her personal childhood story, but because he was there and because he was involved in it, I'm sure he sees things in his own way as well. Or just as a filmmaker, he wants to make certain choices that he thinks makes the movie better, which isn't what she would imagine it to be.
That's the thing, is I think it's interesting in this case because you have, three people in this case, and the three siblings bringing their own perspectives to the same story. But as we know from seeing adaptations, things have to be changed. They don't always work as well on a page in a story to tell like someone's experience the same way as they would on a screen. And so, there needs to be like a cinematic, there's some cinematic decisions made, and that means you change things.
Right. But speaking of that, probably the most controversial choice that Spike Lee makes is the use of the different lenses, the anamorphic lens, when they go to, where is it they go? Is it South Carolina?
They go to Virginia.
Virginia. So when they go to Virginia, he uses a different lens. And I understand as a filmmaker the choice to do that. And I think it's pretty cool as a film watcher. It's almost like a Wizard of Oz type of thing, where you're going into a foreign land and everything feels off kilter and strange. And so he films it all that way in this with the lens that makes everything seem tall and thin.
Right.
Supposedly, when people saw it in the movie theater, they were very confused by this. And they ended up having to add a disclaimer that was what was supposed to happen, because people thought the movie was broken. And I again, just a bold choice by a filmmaker to do something. When looking back at it now, it's pretty brave and an interesting choice. But Joie was very unhappy about that. She did not want that to be done. And he said, I hear your concerns, but I'm doing it anyway. And that's basically how that went. So,
yeah, that's a decision for the filmmaker to make, I think, more so than the writer. But I don't know. I mean, it is certainly a bold choice. And
it's
I
a choice.
I did think something was wrong when I first saw it. But it's so fascinating, like and it's really, even though as shocking as it is, I think it's one choice in many stylistic choices in this film that make it so good. I mean, there are countless things that he does with the camera, and the cinematographer Arthur Jaffa. I don't know how much is Spike or how much is Jaffa, but I mean, there are things that you see in a lot of Spike Lee's films, like direct to camera or the when Troy is being chased in her dream and she's on a dolly and kind of floating into the air.
Yeah, I love that little filmmaking thing that he does.
These beautiful little flourishes that I think really make Spike Lee's films.
Yeah, and the other thing that he always does, which is when a person's reading something, having that person read it directly to the camera. That's a very Spike Lee thing, which he does in a lot of his films.
I think the visuals in this just are really top notch. I mean, I have a bit of a familiarity with Spike Lee's films, but I don't know if any of the bigger ones necessarily look the same way that this looks. I mean, one of the ones that sticks out to me is a 25th Hour. And the only reason that sticks out to me is because Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it. But I do remember like looking down the barrel and talking and, it's just some of the things that are in this. But this is just so stylistically elevated that it's really like an auteur at work. And even though, he had a hand in writing it and didn't write the whole thing, it just feels like such a Spike Lee movie.
I can say, as someone who's seen a lot of his movies, that this is stuff that he takes and continues to use. I mean, it's kind of his signature to do certain things like this. And there are flourishes in every one of his movies that will make you know that it's his.
Yeah.
And Crooklyn is kind of about where he was really perfecting all of that. I mean, Malcolm X is a lot of the same things in that as well. And kind of this time, like 6th, 7th movie is really where he starts perfecting exactly what he wants his movies to look like. And you see this going forward.
It's just really beautiful. You mentioned earlier that you see kind of Crooklyn and things that come after it. What are some of the things that you see that this shows up in for you? Because there's one in particular for me that really jumps out.
So I was thinking a few things that if I started thinking about boyhood, first of all, I see a little bit of that in Crooklyn. And I see, when Spielberg finally got around to making The Fabelmans, which is very much, his personal story. But I have to say, maybe because I'm watching it right now, I couldn't find any instance where Christopher Storer, the guy who made The Bear, talks about Spike Lee. Mm-hmm. But I also can't imagine that he doesn't or wouldn't, because thinking about it now, I feel like there are so many similarities between The Bear and Crooklyn.
Wow.
That it's kind of shocking to me. And the more that I think about it, the more that I see it. Even in terms of the stylistic choices of the way that The Bear is filmed, there are choices that are made with a camera that feel very Spike Lee. When I go back and think about the fishes episode in The Bear in season 2, that chaos and that just sheer the sheer chaos and the screaming and the yelling, it feels very much akin to this. So there are all these little things that I started realizing feel a lot like what I was watching in Crooklyn as I was watching The Bear, and I hadn't seen that at first.
That's really interesting. I never thought about that. But that episode in particular, I think it's like, even though it's tension and it's arguing and it's very aggressive, it's like family, and it's done with kind of love.
Yeah, it's family in its totality, good and bad. It is all these things. And at the same time that you see these people kind of hate each other, you also know that they are stuck together and they will be together no matter what. And that's the feeling that you get in both instances. So that's, I was thinking about this more and more because I just finished watching the last episode of season 4 of The Bear last night. So The Bear was on my mind, and as I'm watching Crooklyn at the same time, and I'm just seeing the similarities, and I was kind of shocked by it. But again, I have no record, even the fact that The Bear is very much a Chicago story, whereas this is obviously a very Brooklyn story too. That Storer is clearly a product of his environment in Chicago and puts that into his work, much like Spike Lee does in this. So yeah, all those little things. So that's what I've been thinking about.
And the music too, right?
And the music, very much of playing the music through dialogue and playing it underneath. That's a similar thing too.
That's really a great comparison. Wow. I'm going to be thinking about that all day today. The thing that jumped out at me as very similar, right, like almost overtly so in my mind anyway, is The Florida Project from Sean Baker, which is just about this little girl and her little feral friends just kind of like left alone for the most part, sort of making their way through the world during the summer. And then there are two adults who kind of try to keep her on track, but they're almost like the way Carolyn and Woody are in this, sort of a good cop, bad cop. And that really just is what stood out to me. But now I'm thinking about is the bear, which is, but yeah. So Florida Project, very early on in the film, is what came to mind. And yeah, I mean, Spike Lee's influence is sort of like undeniable in a lot of stuff. And you know, having just seen this for the first time, I can really see a lot of things. I've seen a lot of people compare it to Moonlight too, which I think has a lot of visual style to it that's similar, and really that coming of age story of the character in that. So yeah, there's a lot of it out there, and with good reason.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that in terms of you know, who this influenced and how. But again, talking about the period of time that it was made. So this is like 94. And he was expressly talking about how he was, with this movie, trying to counter program a lot of what was going on in this period of time. You know, this early 90s is kind of peak gangster movie time. Mm-hmm. When you go back and look, you know, starting with New Jack City, you know, Deep Cover, just down the line, Juice, Menace to Society. I mean, so many, I mean, good films, honestly, films that I really loved, but they're all very much of this gangster ilk and telling crime stories. And he was conscious of that and was thinking about that when he was making this, in a way, just to show that you can make a family film about a black family. It doesn't have to involve crime or, you know, guns or something else like that. But I do think it's funny that it wasn't very successful. In some ways, I'm not sure how many black filmmakers it influenced, other than maybe with Moonlight. But he must have seen the writing on the wall as well, because the movie he makes directly after this is Clockers a year later in 95. So he must have decided, I don't want to do that anymore, and I'll just get going with what everybody else is making. So he makes Clockers next.
Well, it's one for me, one for them, I guess. Because
maybe.
But the films you mentioned, by and large, are even though they have that similarity of content with like the sort of gangster stories in them, if you zoom out a little bit, that's a real big decade for black filmmakers, and they're at the helm of a lot of those films. Like Reginald Hudlin, for example, maybe not as much in the gangster area, but did Boomerang, did House Party, F. Gary Gray, John Singleton, the Hughes brothers. It's a really great decade.
One of these months we'll do, hopefully we'll explore this period of time a little bit more, because, you know, seeing so many strong films come out of the black filmmaking community at this period of time, and then watching it all just kind of dissipate in the late 90s is something I've thought about a lot and honestly don't understand. So it's something I wouldn't mind exploring in the future, but you know, how these filmmakers just kind of didn't jump off after making some really good work and important and popular films in the early 90s, and then just watching them either not work at all or get pushed into television or whatever the case may be. It's always something that I thought about. I don't know why that went the way that it did.
Well, I think, you know, there's probably a bit of racism involved in it, but, you know, on a larger picture, in the 2000s, like black or white or whatever, a lot of the smaller filmmakers from the 90s sort of went by the wayside because the studios at that time were starting to not really make as many of those films. So, you know, there's like so many different aspects of it that could come into play. But, you know, these black filmmakers in particular, maybe a little more marginalized down the road than some of the white filmmakers, but even them as well, you know, a little bit because of the industry.
The whole last in, first out theory, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, it's definitely frustrating across the board. And just in looking at the films that Black filmmakers made in the 90s, it's unbelievable. What a run from all of these filmmakers. It's amazing. So I would love to see more of these. And I would love to see more independent film in general, but a lot
but
of
yeah,
them.
but now that you mentioned this, it's true. It's like it seems like Spike Lee was maybe conscious of the fact that when he first started in the late '80s, he was a singular filmmaker, and kind of watching Black filmmaking explode as his career starts going on, and I think he sees himself trying to counter program or figure out a way to differentiate himself in that period of time to be something different, because he was always looking to march to the beat of his own drum. And so he chooses to go this route and make something a little more personal, a little more family oriented, a little more PG-13, and see where that goes. So I think that was definitely playing into his thinking as he was doing this.
I will say that one of the people who did stick around, or well, maybe didn't stick around, but had had some success during that period, who we talked about on the show before, was F. Gary Gray, who did the Get Shorty sequel that we covered, Be Cool.
Yeah.
So for better or worse, he got a few more shots to work after that. But yeah, and I think another thing is that as I look over the filmography of these guys, there's a lot of music video directing that kind of comes in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe like with hip hop kind of becoming more ubiquitous, that was a field they could move into and make like work that's probably going to hit their community better. Yeah. I don't know.
And we talked about this before, though, how many of these directors that we even talked about in the past came up from making videos. Mm-hmm. Some of the biggest directors of the 90s ended up coming directly from making music videos.
Well, this is interesting because some of these guys like went to music videos after making these films, or are doing them at the same time. And
Spike Lee.
Yeah, I was going to say he's a great example of who's someone who's always making videos. And one of the things that he's directed that doesn't fully surprise me, but it makes me really happy, is he directed the HBO version of David Byrne's Broadway show, American Utopia.
Right.
And that is just such an oddball pair, David Byrne and Spike Lee, but I love it so much.
Right. But again, like, it is and it's not, because you have two quintessential New York people. And it's like they definitely know each other, and they definitely have touchstones that are familiar to the two of them, regardless of what parts of New York they came from. They're New Yorkers at heart. And so in some ways it makes perfect sense that who else is going to tell, David Byrne's story other than Spike Lee. And I love that Spike has kind of become just entwined into the fabric of New York. And if you're going to tell New York stories, like, Spike Lee is there.
Yeah, it's either him or Marty, right? I don't know what the Scorsese version of that David Byrne musical would look like, but it might be similar in a lot of ways, because we just discussed how similar they are as filmmakers. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, Marty goes towards bigger artists when he's making his music stuff. He goes straight for the Stones and Bob Dylan and stuff. So it's a little, but again, Bob Dylan, even though from Minnesota, very much. That New York thing, and Scorsese made that documentary about Dylan, so maybe that's the only similarity you get there.
Never minimize David Byrne in my presence, though, because to me he is Bob Dylan in my head. So, but yeah, let's talk about the cast in this. We've talked about a lot of the stuff around it, and really haven't gotten into who's in it. And Alfred Woodard at the top, really, playing Carolyn, the matriarch. What a great performance from somebody who's had just like a really big and varied career. She is so good in this as sort of like the center of it, really. I mean, outside of the Troy character, she is kind of like the sun that all the planets rotate around. What are your thoughts on her?
Yeah, in a film where a lot of the actors are children, I feel like you need a really strong presence, a grown-up presence to hold the center. and you're not going to do much better than Alfre Woodard. So that makes perfect sense. You need a really strong actress to kind of hold the center of that movie, much like a matriarch in the family who's holding it all together. You need her,
Right.
and Delroy Lindo, who plays the father in this movie, talked about working with her and how intimidated in some ways he was. And he said that people have mentioned that they had really good chemistry together, but this was interesting. He kind of disagrees with that in a way, because he was talking this from his own personal sense. This is, I think, one of the first lead roles he had gotten. He'd worked with Spike Lee a couple times before, but this was one of the first lead roles he'd had. And he was very nervous about it. And he also wasn't a parent, and he was playing a father on screen and was very much in his head trying to figure out how to do this right. And so he kind of felt like the two of them were kind of in their own heads, but they're both really good at what they do. So it seemed like they had good chemistry when really he was just in his own space trying to work things out personally. But it comes across as them working really well together, where he almost feels like they were working separately, which I just thought was an interesting note about how actors see their own work and how he thinks his process was going.
That is interesting. To me, it looks like they're just so on the same page. I mean,
yeah. And I did read there's one scene, the scene where they're talking about where he bounces the checks, the key scene before the huge blow up. Supposedly that was all improvised. And that's very rare for Spike Lee as well. That he usually doesn't let people improvise a lot, but he let the two of them kind of go, and they just went back and forth with a lot of things to try to find the right balance in that scene. And so, yeah, that was improvised between the two of them, which again, I think says more about just how good they are at what they do.
That scene is just so real to me. I mean, my wife is an artist. I like to call myself an artist. And we've both sort of like been the artist, the Woody character, and we've both been the Carolyn character in that scene at one time or another. And just that balance. And like in that scene, it's her just basically telling him, like, look, I need help in like a realistic way, regardless of how you think the creativity is going to help the family. Like, it's not working. And it's just, it's so beautiful. And like the connection they have. It's interesting to hear you say that they didn't think they were necessarily on the same page, like with their acting, but in that scene, you could have fooled me. Like, it's just so
right.
Like, lived in.
Yeah. That's exactly what it felt like. So yeah, I was that interview with him. Definitely stood out to me. But again, maybe that's just him in his own head thinking about it, because I think he was very nervous about making this movie and trying not to fail. The other part, of course, being that he knew that he was essentially playing Spike Lee's father.
Right.
Even though at the time Spike Lee went out of his way to say, "You're not playing my father," and didn't admit it until like 20 years later. Right. Basically thanking him for playing his father with such grace. Yeah. But I think that's the thing as a filmmaker too. Like, you're filming a story about what is basically your own family, but you have to keep a distance from it to be the filmmaker you need to be to make the movie. You can't be too inside of it. And I think that's why probably him and Joie were butting heads, that I think that she felt very much on the inside of it, and he needed to keep a professional distance from it in order to make the film and keep everything together for himself. So, yeah. So again, there's just a lot of these things going on behind the scenes about people are trying to approach this in bringing this story to life. With Alfre Woodard, I don't think it played that much for her, because I think she's just a professional and good at what she does. I didn't read that she had any issues with any of this, but yeah, everyone knew she was playing their mother.
Right.
But yeah, for some reason he wouldn't let Delroy Lindo think that they were playing, he was playing his father.
I didn't know who Spike Lee's father was until I started researching this, and he is Bill Lee, the famous musician, and it was interesting to see some of the people he worked with, because it's almost everybody. And you can see where Spike gets that kind of like activist bent that he has in a lot of his films. I mean, Bill worked with Bob Dylan, he worked with Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie. And in addition to like countless jazz musicians like Monk and all these other people. So that really kind of put a light for me on where Spike Lee comes from, and you can really see how it affects his films. So that was really cool to discover. And his dad scored most of his films prior to this.
I was going to bring this up, which is another side thing that I was minorly obsessed with thinking about. So his father actually did the scores for his first few movies, like his first 4 movies, I believe, including the short that he made and Do the Right Thing and Mo Better Blues. But he wasn't involved in this one.
Right.
You know, Terrence Blanchard does the music for this, and that is part of a long relationship that he ends up having with Spike Lee. But I think it says a lot. And actually, his sister mentions that she regrets not having the father actually do the music for the movie. But again, you have to wonder, you know, was this a choice by Spike, and was it a deliberate choice to keep one more family member out of the movie? Because it would make perfect sense to bring your father in to have made the music for this movie, especially because they had really just worked together. But I really would love to know the reason that choice was made. And I part of me feels like I think bringing his father into the movie would have just been one wall too many to break down. And I don't know, the whole thing might have collapsed in on itself.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I was thinking about that quite a bit.
Well, that's a tough line to walk, because he's the one character portrayed on screen who didn't have a hand in writing it. So, you know, how much input would he be allowed to have as a non-writer and that's a huge difference between 3 kids writing about this story and the one adult who lived it. You know, those perspectives are vastly different. So I think, if you bring him in, it's not going to be the same film for sure. So I'm glad they kept him away for this. Got to talk about Zelda Harris, who plays Troy. What a presence, and what a character that you don't really see a lot of, you know, like a young Black girl at the center of a story, coming of age. That's the thing that ties it to all of the other films, by and large, that we've done this month, is that coming of age. And it's maybe, outside of Duncan, like the best portrayal of that, I think, like the most honest, heartfelt story. Because it's like a realism that even Duncan, like, okay, I have to Duncan in The Way Back, you know, he has to deal with his shitty stepdad, Trent. But in this, I mean, she has to become the matriarch of the family at the end. And what a trajectory.
You know, in some ways, I find it a little bit tragic that her coming of age story, unlike the other coming of age stories we got to see, which are watching someone kind of ascend, you know, we don't know where she goes from here. And in a way, having to take over the role of your mother is very unfair to a 10-year-old girl. And she just kind of steps into that role. And in a sense, she loses the rest of her childhood. And I couldn't help but it just, it made me sad watching the end of it, watching her childhood end in that way. And so, yes, it's a coming of age story, but almost the opposite of that, because she ends up, it just feels really, it's hard for me to process. And again, because I'm not her, and I'm not, it's hard for me to completely understand how you would or wouldn't feel about that. But me personally looking at it, it felt very sad to me.
Yeah, her childhood was stolen from her in a way.
And even the fact that, and this is something handled in the movie, I think, deliberately as well, that even as a person watching the movie, the ending feels very abrupt.
Right.
Everything just kind of happens. And then the next thing you know, you've moved on from it. And what Joie had talked about was that was very much what happened when her mother passed. They didn't even really talk about it or dwell on it. You just kind of put it aside and you moved on. And she feels like she never really got to mourn her mother. Mm-hmm. And she said that for part of that reason, that she can't even really watch the end of this movie. That she says she usually walks away when Troy comes back from Virginia. She usually turns it off. Like, she can't really watch it from that point on, because in a way they never really grappled with losing their mother. And this movie very much handles it the same way. So it's like she just steps into this role, and her father kind of tells her that, you know, you really can't cry about it, and it's time to move on. And that's just it. And life goes on. And that just feels hard to me. It feels scarring to just kind of have to move on and never really address what happened.
I think that that's a big part of why she wrote it. She and her brother, just to finally try to begin processing that grief. I don't know how many years they wrote this after her mother passed, but in some things I read, they said that even like the idea of doing this maybe didn't even like initiate processing that grief the way they had hoped it would. And it took like years down the road before they started doing that. But I think it's for her, like, yeah. And all of these kids, it's about survival, and it's about like just keeping on. And you don't have time to stop and think about that. And as the only woman now in this family, you know, she has to play that role. And that means maybe not exploring your feelings. It means just, you know, making sure these boys have their hair looking the way it needs to look, and that they're getting dinner. And what an injustice to this little girl. But at the same time, like, what is the alternative? Like,
right.
Well, the alternative is the boys step up and really kind of take over where they should. But as we established the whole way through the film, they're not very responsible, and they're not interested in cleaning up or eating black-eyed peas. Those are things that we know.
No, definitely not eating black-eyed peas. That's number one. Oh, that's a quick total side note, that the black-eyed pea scene where he vomits in the plate. Actually, that did happen to me though too, in the house. It involved eggs.
Oh.
Like I had like a fried egg.
Uh-huh.
And I just vomited everywhere. Like I remember that pretty distinctly from when I was a kid.
God. Ooh, that's rough.
Because the edges were like, you know, you get that webbing on the end of the eggs when you fry them, and it gets kind of like, you know, it's like kind of crispy on the end.
I guess. But, man, I haven't eaten eggs in like 30 years,
yeah.
So I don't know.
So anyway, so I got the crusty webby end part, and it just made me vomit everywhere.
Just hearing crusty webby end makes me want to vomit. Yikes. But
anyway,
that scene is the perfect example of the two parents, right? Because here you have Carolyn trying to force this kid to eat black-eyed peas, and then Woody comes in with ice cream and pound cake. It is like just so spelled out, like which parent is which. And I also love that when they go to Virginia and food is offered to them, it's fried chicken and potato salad. And these kids who didn't want to eat anything the whole time are like, let's go. They just want to eat everything. The contrast between Virginia and Brooklyn was really, really interesting. I mean, it was so apparent and just really, really fun to watch. It makes sense that the anamorphic style was applied to it because it's just so foreign.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but we do have to mention the dog. And because that is supposedly a real story. Mm-hmm. The dog and the couch thing, that really happened. And so she made sure she put that in the script, which
heartbreaking.
Maybe you have different feelings than me. I'm still honestly not sure what happened or what we're supposed to think happened, whether it was an accident or it was deliberate, and we don't really know who did what or why.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that the boys pick up a cat earlier in the film and take it and throw it, and that was upsetting. Crazy. So maybe there's a history of animal abuse in the family, and maybe Troy put the dog inside the couch. I don't know.
Although at the end, Troy seems to say, like, I'm sorry that he died, even though I hated his guts. So that made me think that she didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't think she had a hand.
And she walks away. So was it Viola? Like maybe it was the husband. He also hated the dog. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure we're supposed to know.
To me, I want to say it was an accident. I mean, what a terrible thing, you know? Like, how did they know if it was, you know, dog murder? How would they know to put the dog in there? Why wouldn't the dog have barked? Like, I mean, it's not worth getting into, but always upsetting to me to see animals like treated like that. But yeah, the cat thing really bothered me just because, you know, I have a cat, but it was sort of like the blow was softened when I saw them throw the cat, which was clearly like a stuffed animal, into the jump rope. So I was like, okay, this is cool. That's pretty funny. But yeah, just like getting back to Zelda Harris, who plays Troy, got her start on Sesame Street. She did 5 seasons of Sesame Street, which I think is really cool. And she was in She Got Game, another Spike Lee film.
He got game.
Oh, sorry. Well, she had game too, or they wouldn't have put her in the movie. But
yeah, she plays the daughter, the Shuttleworth daughter in that movie.
Right.
He Got Game, by the way, is quietly one of my favorite Spike Lee movies. I kind of love that movie, and I try to explain to people why I love it, and I don't even know how. It's hard for me to explain what I love about it, but I really like it. I just think it's totally worth a rewatch, that people should go back and check it out again. I think it's pretty underrated in the overall catalog.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe because Ray Allen's not really an actor and people think that's not great.
Right.
But I think he holds his own, but I think it's such a powerful Spike Lee performance. Like Spike Lee. Denzel Washington. It's a powerful Denzel Washington performance. Yeah. I find him at his most mesmerizing and compelling in that movie. Like everything about him. And especially the ending scene where he plays one-on-one against his son. Mm-hmm. It was Ray Allen, by the way, an actual basketball player. Yeah. And the word is, he goes at Ray Allen. Like that whole scene is kind of improvised. And Ray Allen wasn't prepared for Denzel to go hard at him. And you see a part in the movie where he's like, oh, that's how it's going to be. Like that is real. Like Denzel is like, I'm trying to score on you. Like this is no joke. And then he finally like just becomes Ray Allen and just completely dominates him. But in the moment, the first moment, like the first two baskets, like you see that Denzel's coming at him and he seems kind of surprised and like what to do about it. And I love everything about that. Like Denzel does not mess around. Like he is really like in it, like of it. He's going at it, playing it for real, because that's what that character would do.
Right.
There's just so many scenes in that movie that he is that he's really, really amazing in. Anyway, that's my side note for He Got Game.
Well, you mentioned Ray Allen, and it makes me really sad because he was one of my beloved Seattle Supersonics. Rest in peace. So,
right.
What a sore subject to bring up. Why did you do that? But yeah, I need to go back and watch a lot of Spike Lee's films because I don't know if I've ever seen He Got Game, honestly, but in watching this, I'm realizing that he's just such a powerful and artistic filmmaker that I kind of slept on. And if I saw, I've seen She's Gotta Have It and Do the Right Thing, but it's been years and years and none of that stuff really stuck with me. So I'm really looking forward, like this opened up a can of worms for me. I'm looking forward to going back and watching all of these things because I'm blown away. I really, really love this movie and I didn't think I would. So.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad that it opens kind of that door for you and go back, because not all his movies, like I said, Spike Lee's a very messy filmmaker. He is, and that's okay. Like, right? I think that's great. That's why he's been around for so long. And not everything's gonna work. Like Girl 6 does not work.
Right.
She Hate Me is not a very good movie. Not everything is a winner, and that's fine. But there are every movie that he makes has kind of one transcendent moment in it, regardless of whether the overall movie is good or not. Mm-hmm. And some have more than others. But I find I enjoy more of his movies than I don't.
Yeah, I think I'll feel the same way. The ones I do remember, like I said, The Inside Man and 25th Hour, like, they stand out as like really well made films. I don't remember much about it. Well, The Inside Man I remember a lot about, but
yeah.
But he's also someone who remakes foreign films, and that is incredible to me. He's about to do it again with Highest to Lowest with Denzel, which is a remake of High and Low, the Kurosawa film. I'm very much looking forward to that. It comes at like the perfect time for me now.
Yeah, you and me both. Although I was a little disappointed in him going at Old Boy. I thought that was unnecessary in general, but also unnecessary for him to do. I felt like it was beneath him, to be honest. I think that may have just been like the one for me, one for you kind of thing where he took that on. But I didn't feel like it was necessary.
That was one for me because I think as we've established, Elizabeth Olsen was in it, so I'm a fan.
That is true.
But overall, yeah, I don't know. Could have maybe done without it. But yeah, I just love that about it, like about him just remaking things for him. And, things from foreign countries are remade for America all the time. Last year, Speak No Evil was made, and that's not Kurosawa or something highbrow, but we're seeing like Nolan remade Insomnia. Like all of these American filmmakers are remaking these things, and I think if anybody's going to do it, Spike Lee is a good one to have at the helm, because it just stylistically he's incredible.
One more quick side note. We're just talking about the making of this movie before we wrap up, because we're getting on here. But another thing that I found out is that there's a reason there's really no deleted scenes. You get the DVD of this, there's no real extra footage. And there's a reason for that. There really is no extra footage. That it turns out that because when Spike Lee first started making movies, we're not really sure he understood like the difference between making like an assembly cut or making like an actual cut. You can make a separate cut for like dailies and kind of track the progress of the movie. And supposedly, like, they weren't aware that that was a thing that you could do. So he would just cut the movie as it went along. And so they were like making a print of the film as it was progressing. Mm-hmm. And then everything else was just kind of like excised and discarded. So they're like, what you see in this movie is the movie. There's no additional footage. And I heard that Black Klansman was exactly the same way. A lot of Spike Lee's movies don't have a lot of extra footage because, they were just cutting it as they went and didn't save anything. And so there's not a lot of additional footage.
That's really interesting.
I thought that was really interesting. I was reading an interview with the editor, and that's what he was talking about, that they were just too green. They didn't really understand that that was a thing you could do.
But I guess there were no plans for a physical media version at the time because there's nothing to put on it.
Yeah.
That's really funny. The one thing that I came across, which, I don't even know if it's worth mentioning, but the house they live in, which is just a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, it's all filmed on location. Even though it's really interesting because all I kept thinking as I watched the kids on the street, like the camera is very like mobile, and you're always seeing it moving around the streets. It just looked like a backlot set to me, but it's like, this is the kind of street that a studio backlot set of a street is based on. And it's like, it's really cool. But the house, they had such trouble paying the electric bill and just really struggled living in that house. This house sold in 2023 for $4 million, which is just like, it shows you gentrification, I'm sure. It just shows you like real estate prices these days. But just the idea of that house being $4 million, watching this happen in 1994, but in the 70s too, like shocking.
Yeah, I'll say. One other just quick thing, maybe just for me personally, that sequence where the lights get shut off, that scene really, really spoke to me. Mm-hmm. Just the idea, though, it's like, you're trapped in the house in the summer, and all you really have is the opportunity to maybe take a drive somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and that's familiar to me in a way where it's like, you could maybe ride your bike, you could go somewhere, but as a family, it's like you may get in the car and you may go someplace. Because that's kind of all you could do. Uh-huh. But even that gets taken from them because in that moment, a bill comes up that they didn't expect or that they couldn't pay. And maybe it doesn't resonate with everybody, but it certainly resonated with me.
Yeah.
That felt, that felt pretty real.
My parents can pay their bills, but we still, even though when I visit, I'm like a grown man now, we still just take drives. Like that's something that's stuck with us from those summers when I was a kid. It's fun.
I like that. And I always think back now that you used to go on drives and, Google Maps was not a thing.
Yeah.
And half the time I think we were lost, but my dad never admitted that we were lost at all, that he always knew where he was going.
That's so funny.
And so we just kind of went with that, and that was fine. And I think about that now. Like, I get in the car with my kids and I always know exactly where I'm going and how to get there, and I have my maps and he was just driving roads. He just kind of figured it out as they went along. And that seems more impressive to me now than I guess it did when I was a kid.
I feel the same way. Like my dad, I felt like my dad was a goddamn atlas. Like he just knew every road, and not just like the local roads. He knew how to get to different places in New Jersey from Pennsylvania. He knew how to get to like North Carolina, South Carolina. looking back on it in retrospect, it is incredibly impressive. Like that's something your kids may never experience with you because you have Google Maps.
No, sometimes I try to hide the Google Maps and pretend that I'm doing it on my own, so they don't realize how dependent I am on it. But I'm like secretly checking it on the side.
You just have like an earbud in that it's like reading it to you.
I keep the voice off. I'm just like reading it down below just so they don't see it. I don't know where I'm going.
Or you could just study ahead of time, right? Or like write it on your hand or something.
Yeah, I actually had to do that in Canada once. So I was in Canada and my phone wasn't working because I didn't have the service in Canada.
Right.
And so I actually had to print out a Google map to go somewhere, and then I had to try to remember it, and then just try to navigate my way through the highways of Canada. But
it takes me back to MapQuest days. You remember that when you had to print everything all the time?
Hell yeah, of course.
Wow, we've really come a long way. Yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to mention about this?
Well, I think that we want to talk about the music real quick.
Yeah.
So the soundtrack for this is obviously really important, and Spike Lee picked every single song. He was in total control of what the music was in this movie, and he basically just went back and picked his favorite songs from when he was a kid. But that makes a really good soundtrack. There are actually 2 volumes of the soundtrack that were released in '94.
Yeah.
There was also another soundtrack full of nostalgic songs that also came out in '94, which would be the soundtrack to Forrest Gump.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the soundtrack to Forrest Gump went to like number 2 on the charts.
Wow.
And I think Crooklyn got as high as 59, which I think is a crime because I think the music in Crooklyn is actually better than the music in Forrest Gump, which is just the most familiar, nostalgic boomer stuff ever, even though the songs are fine. But it's like a paint by numbers kind of boomer soundtrack. And although Crooklyn is a little paint by numbers too, to be perfectly honest, I mean, some of the choices are a little expected, but I think overall, I'm going to choose the soundtrack with the Shy Lights and Motown any day of the week, but that's just me.
I think the Crooklyn music is a little more integral to the story. I mean, it fits in a more like conscious way to talking about the story a little bit.
Yeah, it fits into the scenes. With Forrest Gump, I always felt like they're going like a paint by numbers where it's like, well, this sequence takes place in this decade. What's the most recognizable song of that period I can throw on the movie? Like that's what it felt like. Whereas this does feel more integral to the actual story as it goes along.
I'm gonna unpopular opinion. Crooklyn's the better film. That's what I think.
Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
You know what? I've always said this, that I think that Forrest Gump diminishes on rewatch. And the more you watch it, it has diminishing returns, where I actually think that Crooklyn grows in estimation. The more you watch it, you find other things in it, where I think that, Forrest Gump doesn't have that same rewatchability.
My wife is probably going to like roll over when she hears this because it's like her favorite film. So
that's fine. I mean, a lot of people love it. I have nothing against it. I love Zemeckis, but I do think it hurts a little bit on rewatch because some of the gimmicks, aren't that great and rewatch, and it starts to feel a little hokey.
Yeah.
But a little too simple in the way the story wraps. But I still think it was a decent movie.
Yeah. No. I agree to disagree.
Speaking of rewatch or watches, I guess we would get into what we watched this month. Although we can't, you have to go through the numbers.
Yeah. A little ways to go.
I tried to segue there, but I ruined it because you weren't ready. I almost had a perfect segue.
A couple more things to say. This looking at Rotten Tomatoes, this has a 79 critics rating and a 90 audience rating. Audience really likes it, as they should. Critics do too. 79 is not terrible, but I thought it'd be a little higher actually from critics. I didn't really read any reviews of it, but I don't know what the knocks against it would be from a critic standpoint.
I think I know what the knocks are. I read a couple of things briefly. I do think that some people think that it's just a little messy. And it is. It's a little bit of a messy movie.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, that's what makes it good, I think, partly. Like,
yeah, I think families are messy, so that feels appropriate.
Exactly. This had a $16 million budget, and it only grossed 13.6, so lost money. Hopefully it made it back. because it's sort of had a revival, and in looking at it with a bit of time between when it was released and now, people seem to really be coming around to it. So hopefully that sort of bumped up the numbers a little bit. And
I
helped.
think again that we talked about his thought that he was counter programming, but I think in that period of time where people were expecting or wanting one particular thing,
Mm-hmm.
I think that Crooklyn just kind of fell by the wayside. I don't think it found its audience. I don't think people necessarily wanted it in that moment, or it just got crowded out by a lot of other things that were coming out in '94, and so it just never found its place. But yeah, I do like to think that over the years. Well, speaking of finding its place, there was a contest. I forget what it's called. I think it was called the One Film, One New York contest. It was held in like 2017 in Manhattan. Not in Manhattan, in New York, where they picked a bunch of like the most New York movies, and they had a vote. Like people could vote on what was like the most New York film, and they screened it all in all the boroughs of New York. And Crooklyn actually won. It won that contest.
Wow.
So that does say a lot. I think over the years it's kind of grown in estimation, especially I think the people in New York, as a very, true New York movie.
That's really a lot of tough competition. Holy moly.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Well, that speaks to the resurgence I was talking about. I mean, in with time between then and now, it people get perspective on it, and it's a great film. I'm really glad that we brought this to the show, even though you hadn't seen it before. But I thought you had.
I took a flyer, man. I decided to roll the dice.
I really loved it, but it's the last film that we talk about this month with Stories of Summer. So it's been a fun month. We've covered a lot of things, a lot of coming of age stuff. It's been a real coming of age month for us, and I've had a lot of fun watching these films.
Yeah, I like the coming of age, kind of the through line, but we went to a bunch of different ways, and I think all these films were very distinct in what they covered.
I think the one thing that runs throughout is like unattended children, where kids are just like free to roam in the summer, do what they want, even in summer school. These kids are like doing their own thing. Even the teacher's not really, tending to them. So I love that. And that speaks to the season. Kids just get out of school, go do your thing, because none of these are set in present day, which is another interesting thing about it. I guess theater camp is, but that's a camp setting. But when you look at the other three films that we talked about, Summer School, The Way Back, and this, they're all period pieces, which I didn't think about until now. But that sort of speaks to another time when kids were doing like, do your kids experience this now in the summer? Do they get to run around, or do they have like a big schedule?
No, well, it's interesting you asked that. I was going to bring this up because we were talking about the games they play in this movie. Now the kids don't really know what they are nowadays. So the camp that my kids went to, my older one's actually a counselor there now.
Oh, cool.
But it's kind of an old school camp where it's just a bunch of kids in a park, and they play random games. They actually play a lot of old school games like running bases, and they play dodgeball. Nice. And things like that. Like they just play old school games in the camp. And it's not too regimented, but that's what it's about. It's just to have kids running around and not on their phones, and that's why we send them there. I think it's great.
That's really cool. I think that's the closest thing you can get to just letting your kids roam the city or the neighborhood these days. Because it seems like kids have like the summer's the time to load up on the extracurriculars. I mean, I'm not a parent, so I don't know, but that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, it can be. We did the whole travel baseball thing for a while too, and that took up a lot of summer, but not this year.
Okay.
And that was not enjoyable for me.
Well, yeah, that's tough. But all right, well then, let's move on. We're going to wrap up Stories of Summer next month. I'm very, very excited about this. Here on the show, as much as we can, we try to get things from the library. You do. I just buy Blu-rays all the time. I've become a library. And I don't know how much of it's like a passion for you to have it on physical media. I mean, I like the special features and all the extras are amazing. For me, it's about collecting. And so next month, we're going to kind of lean into that and celebrate physical media. There's a real resurgence of it. And I don't think it's just like a trend that's a fad or is going to pass by anytime soon. I think people, the farther we get into the digital realm, really want to have something in their hands. And, you know, you and I see that in book publishing where like we're putting a lot more effort into the way we make books look now. Everything has all the bells and whistles, like dipped edges. And I think that's because the idea of a tangible item is coming back. And Volkswagen's putting knobs back in their cars now. Like, I think we've reached peak digitization and virtuality, and now there's sort of like an uprising of physical media. So we're going to lean into that, and I'm very, very excited. We're going to talk about things that sort of have not just like something you can go buy on Blu-ray and it's just because it's on Blu-ray, but there are elements to it in each case that are specific to it. And for me, we're going to start next week with from 1977 Sorcerer, the William Friedkin film, which is a remake of Wages of Fear from the 50s, but it's a brand new release on Criterion, just came out on 4K maybe a month ago. And it's just stacked with a lot of really interesting special features. This is a film that's kind of been like a cult classic, and it's been highly anticipated on physical media. There have been a few instances of it, but this 4K is really what people have been chomping at the bit for. It's finally out. And I don't know where else we would talk about this film on the show. So I'm very excited that we can bring it up and look at it, not only as a film, but as like this artifact that we can get into as well, because it's beautifully made, beautifully designed, which we'll talk about next week.
Well, another movie I've never seen, so
yeah, I think you're really going to like it. It's really good. And Roy Scheider's in it. You know, he's always great. So looking forward to that. But just to wrap up this week, let's move on to what we watched in the past week.
So I watched a lot of random things this week because, as I've told you before, I'm watching things with my youngest son, just trying to find things to watch. So I ended up watching Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey because we'd seen Excellent Adventure like a year ago, and I just happened to stumble on the Bogus Journey. And I'm gonna say, I actually think Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is a better movie than Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
It's the weird
I think it's more
one.
enjoyable. Yeah, it's more fun. I think it's funnier. I think it's more enjoyable. That's my hot take now. But then we also decided it was time, maybe because of the AI thing that was put out by the government this week that basically said AI can do whatever the hell they want. We decided it was time to watch the Terminator. So we showed my youngest son Terminator 1 and 2,
nice,
which he very much loved.
Okay,
and Terminator 2, it honestly gets better every time I see it, and it feels more prescient every time I watch it.
It's really see our episode on Terminator 2 if you're listening to this.
We've done it on the pod, but it honestly, it gets better every time I watch it.
Wow.
I also found time to watch. So we didn't really talk about this, but I was looking for movies to watch in the theater, and I was going to see The Phoenician Scheme, and before I even got a chance to go see it, it was gone.
Right.
And it turns out now, like, less than 2 months after it was out in the movie theaters, it's already on Peacock streaming. So I ended up watching it because it was there. I have no idea how it got there that fast. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a very Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like his work. I do, like, much like Spike Lee. They're just filmmakers that have very, very distinctive styles, and you either love it or you don't love it. And I just kind of love it. So I very much enjoyed it. I find his movies to be very breezy. They move very fast. Just a lot of non sequiturs and strange things that go on. I'm a fan, so I enjoyed it.
Interesting.
I also watched Happy Gilmore 2.
Oh, good. Let's talk about this.
Did you watch it too?
I did.
Yeah, and again, I'm sure a lot of people are going to say it sucks and whatever. I was perfectly happy to watch that movie. Happy Gilmore is probably in my top 3 Adam Sandler movies of all time. And I also haven't watched many of the movies he's made lately on Netflix. So, Happy Gilmore 2, I decided to go back into it. I mean, look, it's really, if you like the first one, I mean, almost anyone that was in the first one that's still alive is in this one. And a lot of new people.
Yeah, every
a lot
celebrity.
of fun little cameos. It just fan service to the max. And if you like it, you will enjoy it. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it, even though I knew it wasn't very good. Let's put it that way. That's how I feel about it.
I feel exactly the same way. I love Adam Sandler. I am not apologizing for that. I think he's great. I think just for me, the idea that this is a guy who gets to just continue to make movies with his friends. And,
I know. I'm just going to pause for 1 second, though, and say that you are an enigma. You are an enigma.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. You always keep me guessing. Go ahead.
Well, he has ties to the Safdie brothers, one of whom is in this film. He has ties to Paul Thomas Anderson. So, if PTA vouches for him, I vouch for him. And that shows his range too. Like to be in that and then to be in Happy Gilmore is I think he's great.
Yeah, and it does show how he's grown as an actor too, because in this one he actually brings a little more. I hate to use like pathos or some kind of fancy actorly term, but yeah, there's a sadness now with Happy that he actually conveys pretty well in this movie.
What I think what happened here is he gets to be sort of like the grounded center, and everything he did in the original that made him insane is now like handed off to the people around him. So, for instance, his kids, like the sons, one of whom was the kid from Snack Shack.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. It was fun to see him in this.
I wish he had a bigger role. I thought Snack Shack would launch it. I don't remember his name, but those boys do all of the same stuff that Happy Gilmore did in the first one, and I just, I love the live golf thing, kind of like regular golf against live golf, but like to an extreme, and then Benny Safdie is the villain, and I got to tell you, like. Benny Safdie as a comedic actor has been killing it lately. He plays Dougie on the Curse, the Showtime show with Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone.
Oh, that's right.
And he's in this. I mean, before this, I'd only seen him in like more serious roles. He was in Oppenheimer. He played someone in Good Time, which is a film that he also co-directed. That was like a very serious role, but he's a funny dude, and I love seeing him just sort of be silly, and like working with Sandler is like perfect for that.
Yeah, and same thing with Margaret Qualley, who's kind of gotten into this certain part of her career now, and just kind of watching her be dumb in this was pretty fun.
Love that.
Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, John Daly is actually very entertaining in this
John
movie.
Daly is fascinating. There's always some weird guy on the side. That's usually Steve Buscemi.
And the fact that there are so many actual golfers in the movie too, like they all want to be involved in it, like Scotty Scheffler, and they reference him getting arrested. Like, I mean, he just allows people to go places that you wouldn't think they would go, and they all enjoy it. It was pretty amusing.
It's so fascinating. I was talking to a friend about this yesterday. There's an episode of The Town this week that after the South Park thing, they brought on somebody who was talking about comedy and how comedy is or isn't sort of thriving in the cinema. And it's really not. I mean, the guy they had on is like, that's his wheelhouse. So he has to kind of be optimistic about it. But what's so fascinating about Sandler is that the comedy is so broad that it's one of the few things that translates worldwide. That it's almost like a superhero for comedy, like a superhero movie as a comedy, because it's not elevated, it's just fun, and it's just broad, which is fascinating.
So I'm glad you said that. So as I was watching Happy Gilmore 2, my wife came into the room, and she just said, she's like, "Why do guys like Adam Sandler movies so much?" I just thought it was a really funny question, and I struggled to really find an answer for her. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I just think it's pretty good.
It can't only be guys. I mean, the amount of hours people stream his stuff on Netflix, I think it crosses genders, but it has to be like primarily.
I wasn't gonna start the overall argument about it, but I did think it was a funny question. Like, what does make Adam Sandler so popular? But I don't know.
In the particular lies the universal, and I think he is so broad in the things that he does in their specific stories that anybody can apply it. It's also just mindless in a time when everything is so heavy. I mean, he's like an antidote to the news, basically, and we all need that right now. So is South Park, but they kind of make the news, so that isn't quite as removed from it. But I do hope that this doesn't begin a trend of like Billy Madison to Little Nicky to.
Yeah, I really did not. I was never a fan of Billy Madison, to be honest.
I wasn't either.
I thought Happy Gilmore, it was really when I was like, oh, he's going to be something. He can be something here. But Billy Madison didn't amuse me at all.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But he's undeniable, Adam Sandler. He is
undeniable.
He is undeniable. But he's like Thanos. He is inevitable.
Yep.
So good for him. I mean,
and quick side note, Bad Bunny was pretty funny.
Yeah, he's a funny bunny.
Yeah, I mean, I knew because seeing him at SNL that he has some comedy chops, but yeah, it turns out Bad Bunny is actually pretty funny. I could see him branching out into something. Maybe Adam Sandler will give him a side movie or something. Who knows?
I thought Haley Joel Osment was incredibly funny too as the villain.
Yeah, he has really found his way.
Yeah.
As an going from child actor to adult actor, you always know someone's going to struggle to figure out how they're going to get there. But he has really kind of found his groove in playing like smarmy assholes. It turns out that is his wheelhouse, because he was also in an episode of Poker Face where he played a similar rich jerk. So he has really found his niche in like what he excels in.
Did your son watch this with you too?
No, this was a solo watch for me
because it's also Terminator 2, right? The villain from the first one, Shooter McGavin, becomes the ally.
That's right.
So, boy. That's a tried and true trope of the sophomore effort. Like we just saw with Megan too. Well, I did, but
that was just you.
Only me,
just you.
So that's
interesting. And like 5 other people.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, but that's okay.
I forgot how much I enjoyed Shooter McGavin. By the way,
and I love
Christopher McDonald, like low-key MVP of Happy Gilmore.
So good. But the graveyard scene where they fight, and it's just all the callbacks to the people from the first one. I thought that was... I worried that would be stupid, but I actually really liked it.
Although, in typical Adam Sandler fashion, it goes one step too far.
Right.
The grave of the air conditioner lady, that was one bridge too far.
Yeah, that's for sure. But I was mostly interested in watching this because a lot of it was filmed around here where I live in Montclair. And I believe, I'll have to double check this, but the institution that Shooter McGavin is in is it's down the road in Belleville. It's also the same one that was used in Joker 2. So it's become this like hot spot of like playing an institution in the movies lately in New Jersey.
Is it an actual institution?
It's a hospital, I believe.
Okay.
But it's very ominous looking, even without all the set decoration that they put on it. Because it was abandoned for a long time, as far as I know, and it just sits by itself on this hill. So it very much looks like a movie hospital, and all the exteriors of it, I'm pretty sure in this were at that place. So, speaking of hospitals, unless you have anything else that you watched this week that you want to mention.
No, that was it.
I went to see The Home, which is... Do you know about this movie?
I do. I saw the trailer for it, yeah.
Oh, my God. I can't even... I can't even, talk about it. This is a film from James DeMonaco, who created the Purge series. He also wrote The Negotiator, and Jack, for some reason, the Robin Williams
You remember
movie.
The Negotiator? Really? Negotiators is like my wife's favorite movie.
Really?
Yeah, she loves that movie. I really like it too, but she loves it.
I remember it being okay, but The Home is not. This is a film where Pete Davidson is the lead. He is a kid in foster care with his older brother. The older brother dies, and that just kind of breaks him. So he becomes a graffiti artist. Just talking about it sounds insane. He gets caught doing graffiti and is forced to do community service in the form of being a handyman at a retirement home. There's a lot of nefarious stuff going on. It's very Suspiria-esque. There's some sort of like cabal that's happening, and he has to get to the bottom of it. I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt because Pete Davidson, he's had kind of a tough time. I mean, he's like openly dealt with drugs and like trauma, and he looks really healthy now, and to me, that's a good sign. I was very happy to see him like doing something, but not a great film. I mean, this is a film that's produced by Miramax and Lionsgate, and the end was legit like Sharknado. Like bad CGI, just a really thin plot, like poor pacing. I was like crossing my fingers all the way through, and then it got to the last act, and it was like, it's like they ran out of money or something, and it was like really, really terrible. So, I don't recommend it, unfortunately. That's all I watched this week. So that's it for another episode. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to come back next week. Physical Media Month, very excited. We're going to talk about Sorcerer from 1977, The King, William Friedkin. Join us then. So long. As always, thanks for listening to the Weekly Movie Throwdown. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for even more from us, visit moviethrowdownpod.com or connect with us on social media. We're Movie Throwdown on Letterboxd and at Movie Throwdown Pod everywhere else.